Okay, so in this series of lectures, we're going to be learning how to edge loop a 3D character, and we'll be making this character from Felicity Bergman. So she's designed it in 2D, and we're going to take that 2D design and move it into 3D. Typically in production environment, even with a simplified character like this, what happens is that ZBrush is the first application you would use, and we would, ZBrush a high-res sculpture of this. Then we would take it into Maya and we would retopo the model, and then we would rig, and then we would send it to animation. So as a lead animator for the studio I work for, I usually get the characters before anyone and I test them out. The reason you do that is to make sure that they can actually do what the game, I'm a game developer, what they need for gameplay in the engine versus say a cinematic. And even for a cinematic, a film, short, you've got to be able to animate the character properly. And so that's normally the way it works, and many times the character goes back and there's some redesign, there's remodeling, and so on and so forth. But for us, what we're going to do in this class is we're going to make this little guy or girl, and then we're going to rig it. So we're going to unwrap and rig this character. So it'll have a simplified texture, it's a simple character, it's a easy win. And I would say that, once you kind of get started and you're comfortable modeling and you feel good about what you're doing, then you can take and start to design your own character in 2D and do a little turnaround like this for me. We're going to collect reference for this class, so any of the characters that you're thinking about creating, I prefer that you come up with something new, not something you've drawn before. I'd actually like you to have reference sheets, so sheets where you've gone and you collect the characters that are like it. Or inspirational things that give you ideas for your character, and then we start to do some thumbnail sketches, and then we do a turnaround like this, and that's what Felicity did for us with this character and several others. But basically, once we get to that point, you can actually then jump in, and I've got tutorials for ZBrush, and you can start to sculpt in ZBrush. It's not nearly as technical as Maya, but you can start to sculpt that character while you're doing the tutorials for what would be the 3D character that we have, or we see an example of here. Alright, so let's jump in and get started. I'm going to do my best to try and make sure that I don't go beyond 30 minutes or so. So let me take this and cover up my game engine there. Sorry about that. And make sure my interface fits. And now it does. So I am actually in Maya. And that's this guy down here. If you've never used it before, I assume you have, since you have probably already watched the introduction to my lecture. So basically we're going to be doing modeling. So I'm going to go from animation, I was animating, to modeling now. So it's going to set up a different menu set across the top up here. I have modeling standard for my workspace. You can lock that or unlock it, meaning you can move your windows around. So I could take this out and then put it back. It's not a really good idea. You can kind of see how hard I'm having to work just to get this thing back, and it doesn't actually want to go back. So my suggestion to you is that even though you can do this, I wouldn't do it. I would leave it like it is, because you can see the channel box was very small, and now it's actually widened out, and I can't scale it back. So while it's great to be able to adjust these things, there are common workspaces that you can just click and it creates them, and when you start moving these windows around, it's just a heads up, a lot of times you can't get them to scale back. So for instance, I don't have as much real estate here as I did when the channel box was half this size. So try not to take them out and move them around, especially when you very first start. Many times, especially with these little guys down here, the time slider, if you adjust the time slider, you will have a really hard time getting it back to just this scale, and the scale is perfect for us. But sometimes it stretches it really big, and your window is very small. Sometimes it won't let you put it back. And I know this sounds crazy, but it's just, it's not new. It's not a new attribute for Maya, but it's just one that doesn't quite work right. So let's try not to move the windows around. Let's try and use different workspaces that you can just pick from here, and then I would suggest just locking them so you don't accidentally pull a window out. Alright, now let's go ahead and open up a scene file. So you will have already downloaded all the files from your Canvas shell, and so I'm going to go into File, Open Scene, and in this scene I will go to basically a folder that you'll have as well. Now, as far as it being on your C drive, I don't know. It's wherever you put it. So when you downloaded these files, my suggestion is you just sort of leave them like they are with the folders inside of them, because it's going to make it really easy when you go to open up stuff. We're going to go to Character Creation, Anim 110, and then we're going to go to Maya, and that's where the file is. And we're going to go to Character Creation 1. You won't have this series of like numbered versions of this, but initially, but you will eventually. And what I have is a go-by setup for us to model against, and then one for us to look at. We're going to knock this out really quick, so the base model of it is just going to be quick, and we're going to go back in, and then the head is actually where a lot of the work is going to be. And if you look at the character, the head is bigger than the body. So typically when you're modeling, and especially with a character, you usually have the character, the head, as the focal point for your creation, for your design. And so we kind of drive the character from the ground up. A lot of times you'll see darker colors down the bottom of characters, and just a real emphasis on the attitudes and expressions of the eyes and the mouth and things like that. And basically, it's especially with a character like this, really important. So the head's going to take us a little bit longer. So when you save, I would do that right now. So I would go File, Save, Scene As, and then when you do, you just want to name this a different name. This is a naming convention, so it's character creation underscore 0, in this case 1. You can save it as 02. I would just go ahead and do that. That way you don't save over the creation 1 and have to re-download it. You can always re-download it, but just so you don't have to. And that way you don't destroy that first version of the file. So this particular naming convention, you can change it, but don't use periods. This .mb is .maya binary, and then there's a .maya ASCII. When you go to save your file, whatever you save it as, that's how you'll have to open it up. If this is on ASCII, it won't even show the file. So if you saved it as a binary. So make sure that you remember to check that. If you can't find your file and you know you saved it, just make sure you're on the right compression, and that's what this is, file type, and it compresses all the data into binary or ASCII. Maya binary is 0s and 1s. Maya ASCII is text, and you can edit it in a text editor without even opening up Maya. Programmers love ASCII. So as an artist, we don't really care. Maya binary for us will be fine. And then we're going to save it as a 01, 02, 03, and that's because what we want is, we want you to, every 30, 45 minutes or so, save your file just in case it crashes, and that way you don't lose like a bunch of information and a bunch of work, because this, if you keep saving it the same name over and over again, could contain weeks of work, and if you lose it, that's it. So changing the name helps us save any sort of a crash or data that might happen while we're doing one of our assignments. So after you've saved, make sure you save into that folder. If you save back into a different folder, Maya won't know where these pictures are. So if you save into that folder, it will, and it'll be able to, every time you double click it, it'll open up the picture and the Maya file, but they're two separate things. So make sure you save in the same folder structure that I have in the same way. Alright, that's a common thing. I'm not just being anal retentive. I work at a studio. All the students that I've ever had in the last 23 years that have gone to work in studios have the same sort of naming conventions and paths that they save to. When you're making a game, if you're interested in that, in game development, there's a series of folders, like a tree of folders, basically, that you have to save particular ways and into when you get done at the end of the day or as you're working. So this is a common practice you need to get used to and need to start doing. If you're messy like me, really practice it. Alright, let's go ahead and start modeling now. We've talked about everything else but that. Let's jump in and just block out the body real quick. So I'm going to go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Cube. And it's going to create a cube for us in the center of the world here. I'm going to hit W. And I'm just going to pull this cube up. Now, I'm going to take this cube, and it's basically at the center of the world. And when you rotate around your go-by, what I've done is I've fixed it so that we can only see one side. Because as we begin to model, you'll see the genius of that, and we don't want to have to deal with like looking through two planes. So this is one plane, this is another plane, but it could be two-sided, so if we leave it alone, it actually is. And I just turned off the two-sided effect for the go-by. So basically, let's just scale this up, R. So I'm going to scale it up so it sort of fits roughly. That looks pretty good. And then what I want to do here is I want to split it a few times. So we're going to go into the modeling toolkit. I'm going to go to my multi-cut tool. And you'll notice that with the multi-cut tool you'll have edge flow, and we want to turn that off if it's on. And then some other things that we will talk about as we begin to model. But I'm going to hold down Control and middle mouse click, and then hold down Control and middle mouse click. And then I'm going to give it just a little bit of a shoulder. So I'm just kind of, I'm doing this, right? So I'm just kind of middle mouse clicking, or rather Z, just left, hold down Control and left mouse click this time. Sorry. Alright, so now what I want to do is I want to actually take this and this, and I'm going to hit R, and I want to scale it out like that. And then what we're going to end up doing is we'll extrude out a set of faces for the neck. So I'm going to left mouse, hold down Control and click, left mouse, hold down Control and click. Now I'm going to come down here, I'm going to grab these two edges, I'm going to hit R, and we're going to scale this in like that. And that's going to be the middle of our character. And our go by isn't perfectly positioned, but it's close enough. And then this is, I'm just going to make sure that's scaled perfectly straight. But I'm going to take this, and it's going to be the neck of our character. So that's actually going to be our character's neck. So this set of faces here. But I want to make sure it looks about right. And then what we're going to do here is I'm going to actually take these two as well as these two. So I rotate around. So these are vertices. So right-click Vertex. I'm going to hit R and scale them in. Same thing here. Scale them in. Okay. So I can see that this one's a little bit further. So if I double-click that and I hit R or I hit W, I can just kind of push this over. If you double-click, you'll be able to pick a ring of, or rather a edge loop, and that's what this is an edge loop. Okay. I'm just trying to make sure it's sort of even. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to grab this, and I want to grab this, and I want to extrude. And then R, scale it out, and then I'm going to take this particular face. So I'm right-clicking and I'm going to Vertex or Face or Edge, and that's how I'm accessing these things. I'm not going to worry about this side of the character anymore, so I'm going to right-click Face, and we're just going to delete it. So I'm going to delete that side of my character. Shift will let you add to your selection, so I'm just picking those faces and deleting it. And now that we've got an arm, what I want to do is I actually want to take and I want to extrude out a hand. So I'm going to grab that, I'm going to hit Extrude again, W, and I'm just going to pull out a hand like that. I'm going to grab this and this. I'm going to hit G because it lets us extrude again or do the last, use the last tool. And now I'm going to scale it in the X, and then I'm going to hit G one more time, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to scale it in the X using that gizmo. Now that hand's a little big, so what I'm going to do is right-click Vertex. I'm going to select all the vertices here. I'm going to hit R and scale it down to about right, W, and kind of position it. Pull the arm in like that, and then I'm going to select through the object. So I'm selecting through, make sure you don't get the shoulder, and I'm just going to take and hit R and scale this up just a small amount. I'm going to grab this, selecting all the way through our model, and then I'm going to take, pull that down like that. Okay, grab these guys for shoulder and sort of line that up. Selecting through again, and the character's got a little bit of a shoulder there. I'm going to select through on the hand, making sure I just get those. I'll hit R and scale those up. Alright, now we're going to take and grab the leg, extrude, and I'm just going to pull this down and over about right there, and then I'm going to hit G and pull this straight down like that, and then sort of shift this over just a tiny little bit. Okay. W, with that face still selected, I'm going to take it and put it in the center, and we're going to do something similar. Double click this edge, it goes all the way around. We're going to do something similar that we just did. And now I'm going to take this face, I'm going to pull it down so it lines up with that. And then right click edge, I'm going to grab this edge and line it up like that. So we're gonna do something similar that we did with the hand. I'm gonna do the same thing with the face. So I right-click face, select through the model like this, and just sort of try and line it up a little bit more. Right-click vertex, select all the vertices, hit R, make sure they're scaled straight, W, and then pull them up. And then now I'm gonna grab this face, and I'm gonna select this face. So it's gonna be kind of hard, but you can pick it. Just barely kind of, you can try out underneath as well. It's probably a better way to select it. And then extrude. I'm gonna hit R and scale it out in the X, about like that. I'm gonna grab this, W, push it over. I'm gonna grab this edge, so right-click edge, push this over. I'm gonna come underneath here, pull this over. Alright, and then now I'll grab these and push them down. Alright, so we're at 16 minutes. So the last thing we'll do here is I'm just going to grab these three faces and extrude them forward. I'm going to shading and then X-ray. We can see through our model, and I'll place it just like that, and then now shading, turn X-ray off. Grab this top portion here, W, and we can kind of pull it back just a touch. Grab these two edges and kind of pull it back just a touch. Alright, so right now what we want to do is we're going to go to the top, edit, delete all by type history. That gets rid of all the history in our file. We're going to take and we're going to duplicate it over. I know that your model is actually set up to be facing the Z towards you, the X to your right. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to go to edit and then duplicate special, dialog box. We're going to model half our character and the other half that we're about to duplicate out. And yours duplicate special options. If you hit reset settings, they're going to look like this. But we want an instance copy. We want to do a negative, in this case, scale X. So we want to duplicate it in that direction. That's a positive X. But we're going to negatively scale it 1 in the X. This is X, Y, and Z. I'm going to hit apply. And then what we have is right-click vertex, something that if we update one side, it just automatically updates the other, and we do half the work. Okay, so in the next one, we're going to do a little bit of cleaning on some of our edges, and then we're going to start trying to knock out what we need in order for our character to be able to be rigged and articulated or rotated, moved, animated, brought back to life, or brought to life. In the next lecture, we'll do a little bit of that topology work. So I'll see you in the next one.